Howdy guys. So in this video we're going to continue where we left off and finish making our barrel. So we're going to start with the barrel heads and add the bunghole in this video. So let's get started. We'll go down to our barrel, and over here on the right let's add a circle because that's going to be the base shape for the barrel heads. So we're going to set this to the ZX plane, and we're going to go into our staves here and copy this radius and paste it over here so our barrel heads will always stay the same size as our barrel radius if that were to ever change. And we're going to go ahead and change this to a polygon type, and again copy the columns from our stave shape so that it will blend nicely with our columns. Let's turn on points so that we can make sure that they're all showing up correctly. And then once we have that, we'll add our grid, which we're going to use as the template for a buoying operation so that we can get the staves for the barrel head. So we're going to put this down to a 2 rows in that direction, and let's say 5 or so there. Our size is going to need to be just slightly larger than double the radius just to be safe. So we'll go ahead and paste this and multiply it by 2.1. And then we'll copy that and paste this over here. And if we template our circle and our grid, yep, that looks about right. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and check out our circle. So one thing in Houdini, when it generates a circle, if we take a look at the normal here, we'll see that our normal, just turn off this grid, is pointing down. And that's because Houdini calculates a circle. If we take a look at the point numbers, they are going from left to right in a counterclockwise direction, which in Houdini means that our normal is going to point down. So we can fix this by just adding a reverse node, and now our normal is pointing up. So we're going to add a Boolean node, which performs Boolean add subtract operations for our circle. And we'll see that upon doing so, we get a cutout of our grid on our circle. And it's doing this using the intersect operation by default. So when we middle mouse click over here, we get our 4 polygons. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we can just poly extrude this and increase this distance. Let's actually make this the same distance as our staves, and we'll get that from the poly extrude down here, and we'll just paste that right there. Alright, and so that we can see some of this separation here. Alright, so we'll see, notice on our poly extrude, I want each of these planks to poly extrude separately. So what we can do, because we have 4 polygons in our Boolean node, we can actually use the poly extrude to divide each individual element into its own extrusion plane. And let's make this a little bit smaller. That looks good. Alright, so now that we have the base shape of our barrel head, let's add that output back. Let's go ahead and place them correctly with our barrel. So if we preview this, this is pretty close to the correct position for the bottom head. Let's go ahead and add a transform node here, and we're going to go ahead and invert this in the Y direction to flip it upside down so that the planks are facing out towards the bottom there. And we're going to have to translate this up by a certain amount. And let's go ahead and write a little expression to make sure that it always stays just slightly above the base of the barrel. To do that, we'll go ahead and take our stave height over here and copy this parameter. Or actually, let's go ahead and use bbox operation again. So we're going to take stave base and then go in here and we're going to do bbox quotes dot dot slash, and we're going to go into our stave and then stave base end quotes. Then we're going to do comma dy min, so that we're always at the bottom. So you will see right here, this is going to put it at 0 by default. This may be overkill, but for the purposes of explanation, this is something that we should probably be doing. And we're going to multiply this by, or rather, we're going to add 0.1 just to pump it up just a little bit. Alright, and now that we have the bottom head, I'm going to go ahead and label that. We'll make another transform node, and we're going to label this one top head. And this guy, we're going to do something pretty much the same thing, but in the other direction. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this expression over here and paste it. And we're going to do dy max instead of min. And we're going to want to subtract 0.1 instead. That way, as our barrel grows in height, we'll see our top staying where it is. And we'll go ahead and merge these two together. And then we'll do another merge so we can separate our lids and merge them together to our barrel. So now that we have our lids, let's go ahead and add an operation so that we can choose whether or not we display the top lid of the barrel or not, because maybe not all barrels have lids. So to do that, let's go ahead back to our HDA and our type properties, and we're going to add a toggle, and we're going to leave this default to true, and then we're going to label this toggle head, and we're just going to call this top. Probably rename this to just toggle top, and we'll hit apply and accept. And then now we can copy this top parameter over here. And what we're going to want to do is add a switch node so that we can choose between whether we display this top head or not based on this switch parameter. So we'll paste that relative reference in here. And so what we're saying here is when this is 0, we will not display our top head, and when it is true, we will turn the top on. So we'll move this over to the right, and I'll add a null node so that our switch has something to switch to. And let's make that null 1, and we'll see that now we have a toggle to turn our top lid on and off. Alright, so now that we have our top working, I'm going to go ahead and make this switch a different color. It's a brighter yellow, thought it will work. So this is our barrel tops. I'm going to go ahead and subnet that and call this heads. Move that up here. So I'm going to go ahead and group our parameters up here for our barrel so that we can make our user interface nice and clean before we start adding the parameters for the bunghole. So we're going to go ahead to type properties, and we're going to add a new folder separator. So we'll bring this folder in, and then we'll just select these and drop them into the folder. We're going to call this folder name barrel, and hit apply. And now we'll see that it has shown up in its own little barrel tab. And if we want, we can make this tabs, or simple, or collapsible. And there's a lot of different options that we can perform from. I'm going to go ahead and go with simple because I think it's cleaner. I'm going to name this barrel, lowercase. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and add another folder for our bunghole. And we're just going to make this another simple folder. And it's going to show nothing until we fill this folder with something. So we're going to want to toggle for whether or not we have a bunghole. That's probably a good step one. Let's bring the toggle over here and put it in here. Let's put toggle bunghole. And we'll hit apply. And there we have that. And we're probably going to want to be able to control the location and relative size of our bunghole as well. So let's go ahead and put hole size, and hole location right there. And we're going to say it by default starts with a bunghole, so we're going to make that true. And our hole size, let's say our min and max, I'm just guessing right now, can be 0.05, and we'll make this 0.15 as a max. We'll set its default to 0.1. And then our location is going to be a nice easy 0 to 360. And we'll just set it to right in the middle by default. Hit apply. And now let's start working on adding our bunghole to our barrel. So let's dive into our network. And now let's start with another circle, just like we did with the barrel head, because that's going to be the shape of our hole. And we'll go ahead and template this. And we're going to want our circle size to pair to our parameter over there. And we're just going to have it stay uniform. And then let's go ahead and make this a polygon and move these divisions up just to get a more round hole. That looks like it'll be okay. And then we're going to add a transform so that we can control our bunghole's location. And on this, we're just going to start rotating this in a circle like this, and you'll see why here in a second. So let's just copy this and add this location to the rotation. And then we will go ahead and take a reference over here from our barrel. Let's go ahead and actually add a null node here. I'm going to pull these in. I'm just going to call this barrel body. So now that we have our transform there, we can go ahead and poly extrude our bunghole shape so that we can cut it out using a Boolean operation similar to what we did with the heads through the staves. So let's go ahead and just poly extrude this by a lot so that it's breaking contact with that. And we'll notice that as we rotate this around, we'll be cutting a hole out everywhere we have here. So we'll just add a Boolean and we'll come in through our barrel body and change this to a subtraction for B minus A. And there we have a nice bunghole subtraction out of our geometry. And you'll notice sometimes geometry might get a little bit weird coming through these breaks. And we can fix that usually just dropping a little fuse node, so it will fuse any vertices that are really close together. So let's go ahead and shake this merge out. Go ahead and so we're going to subnet this guy into our bunghole. We'll dive down in here and see how that's working out. And then we can just take our merge and we'll merge these guys together. Now we've got our bunghole size, location, and this works with our bow amount as well as the number of staves and the height. So we can turn our bunghole on and off. It doesn't do anything yet. Let's go ahead and fix that. And so to do that, we're going to do a very similar thing to what we did with the heads, and just add a switch node right here, and we'll add in null. Here I'm going to go ahead and name this to bunghole null. And then we'll switch these up. And we're actually going to want to separate this out. So we don't need this null. We're just going to go ahead and move this guy over here. And then move this up. And we'll just go around our bunghole when we don't need him. Alright. So now we'll tie our bunghole switch parameter to our bunghole switch. And we'll just label this bunghole switch. And then when our bunghole is on or off, that works right there. So when our bunghole is on or off, we would like these controls to be on when our bunghole is on, but we really don't need them here if we don't have a bunghole to see. So what we can do is go into our type properties and edit these parameters so that they disappear or are hidden or disabled while our bunghole parameter is set to false. So to do this, we can go to our disable when, and we'll hit the left brace, and we'll paste our toggle bunghole operator here, and we'll say when it is equal or equivalent to 0 to turn it off. And now we'll see that when we have turned our bunghole off, this parameter is disabled. Similarly, we could take this into our location and put it on hide when, and if we hit apply, when we turn this off, our whole location parameter completely disappears. So I'm actually going to take our hide and move it over to our size as well, and hit accept. And now our bunghole parameter is much cleaner. Alright, and we're going to end this video right there, and in the next video we'll look at what we can do with projecting the rings on the outsides of the barrel.